Hello and welcome to Fit After 40. I'm Chris here with Tony, and our guest today is Jena Kocsis. Jena is a ballet dancer and instructor who runs a ballet school for adults. We are very excited to talk to her today. Jena, welcome to the show. How are you?
Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, well let's start with your story. So tell me about how you got into ballet. What was your first experience like? What drew you to it?
Well, that it's sort of been something that's called me my whole life. So somewhere when I was a young person, I saw one of those PBS specials back when they you know published the ballets on PBS regularly. And I had turned to my mother and I said, "That's what I want to do." So we went searching. We found a school that while it was not a technically advanced school, it was a school that really instilled a love of dance and movement. And that's kind of what has carried me through my whole career is just the fact that I love the translation of the movement into the music, into a story, and that artistry kind of blends music and movement together. So from there, we moved several times throughout my childhood, and I ended up with a ballet conservatory in St. Louis, Missouri, through my high school years, um,
Hmm.
with a wonderful mentor that kind of took me from the bare bones and gave me that really solid technical foundation into a job. She really kind of mentored me all the way through to the audition process. And then I was offered an opportunity to work with a ballet company on the East Coast. And
Wow.
then I started that adventure, which was a different adventure
Yeah.
than training. I danced with several companies all along the East Coast. And if you know anything about working in the arts, when you're performing in the arts, that doesn't always pay all of the bills. So all of us had additional jobs, and I ended up pursuing teaching because
Mhm.
alongside my technical training in high school, Nathalie Levine had a pedagogy program that I was able to study through high school, and she kind of laid that foundation of teaching. And honestly, I found myself really loving I love the process of it. I love going into the studio, working on something, all of those little growth moments because it is a long-term investment. It's not an instant gratification art form. So you've got to really put that in. And I really like the process. So I started teaching alongside performing. And every, contract move, I moved into a new studio with some new students along the way. And about the time I was getting ready to retire from performing, I had the opportunity to purchase a studio, a brick and mortar studio from a school I was currently teaching at because the owner was retiring. And that launched into my ownership and artistic directorship for about a decade of a pre-professional school in the New England area. And and then that kind of shifted. My husband got a different job that caused us to travel some more. And so I closed the brick and mortar and we started teaching some of my former students online, but that was still kind of not quite a thing at that
Hmm.
point. It wasn't until COVID that that really became a thing. And through my journeys, I've now, after closing my brick and mortar, I have taught all around the globe as we have moved here and
Mm.
there. And one of the kind of pitfalls that I have seen is, dance in general, ballet
Hmm.
specifically, tends to have a real ageist quality to it.
Absolutely.
It is very specific that if you're going to do something with it, it will be till a certain point, and then it's only until that point. And if you're pursuing a career in the performance aspect of it, I think there definitely does have that quality and that
Hmm.
aspect to it. But dance itself does not equal career. Many of us are dancing because we just enjoy it. And I find that, there were just a lack of programs out there for any kind of adult, whether they
Sure.
wanted to begin, whether they wanted to return, or whether they had, in my case, been dancing all along and wanted to keep that in their repertoire. There just weren't classes or opportunities unless you were around a major metropolitan area. And so I started offering some classes online. And so that bloomed into a totally virtual online studio where I'm
Yeah.
working specifically with adult dancers. Um, I believe children need to have in-person training. I wholeheartedly
Hmm.
believe that, particularly if you're going to go on through something. Their body awareness is not there, but adults have a lot more body awareness and a lot more thought. And so now I'm working with adults that never had the opportunity and would like to begin ballet, adults that danced as a child and for whatever reason had to, change their path and they made a choice to leave that behind and are looking to return to ballet. And I have dancers that have been dancing their entire life and they're just looking for a technically based class to keep that in their life
Hmm.
and still have that opportunity. And so I have students all across the country and we meet regularly and everything is
That's
online.
great.
So
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to own a restaurant, and a lot of people at the Nashville Ballet, would pick up shifts at the restaurant and so forth. And boy, the ageism in that
Yeah.
field is very, very real. I knew one or two people who were able to do more character roles into
Yeah.
their 30s. Drosselmeyer, because you could do the magic tricks and so forth. But as far as the dancing roles go, you kind of turn into a pumpkin around 30, don't you?
Um, it depends on the actual roles. Honestly, I
Hmm.
feel like that was a stigma and everyone sort of bought into that myth all along the years. I don't Our bodies do change. I really kind of feel like what was happening when you hit 30 wasn't so much that your body kind of petered out, was that we were having to face life choices, right?
Perception. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, if we wanted to have families, that was when
sure.
those choices were going to come into play. And 20 years ago, there was very much a rift. You were choosing one or the other. It wasn't, a lot of them weren't in tandem. But we are seeing a lot of shifts, which are really positive in the dance industry right now.
That's
We are
great.
seeing a lot more people having careers into their 30s and 40s before they're having to retire. We're seeing them be able to go on paternity or maternity leave and have families alongside their careers. And it's just becoming more commonplace, which is, I think, wonderful that it's not
Absolutely.
so stark of a decision that we can kind of blend that and include that because it really is it's an artistry and that is part of humanity and living your life. So I'm seeing it
Yeah.
change, but yeah, my performing career, it was definitely when you got to your 30s, if that was something that you wanted to pursue in terms of a family, you just had to make a choice.
Had to
Yeah.
choose. Yeah. How
Yeah.
old were you when you got started? You said you were young, but I don't know if you said how old you were.
I took my first ballet class when I was probably about 5.
Very young.
Um,
Very young.
so
Okay.
it was very young, but again, that was all just the love of movement and the love of dance.
Sure.
And I didn't really start formal training until middle school when we moved down
Okay.
into the St. Louis area, which in terms of classical ballet is on the late end if you're going to have a career.
Yeah.
Obviously not doable, but it's on the later end. A lot of people start formal training more like 8 is when really you have the body
Mm.
awareness for a classical
Yeah.
ballet career.
Hmm.
You gain from the classes prior to that, but really the nitty gritty stuff starts about 8.
Sure.
Um, and so yeah, my aspect of diving into the the real technical technique was on the later end. But I had a solid foundation. I had terminology, I had movement awareness, I had body
Mm.
awareness, which all kind of helped. And I just
Hmm.
loved it, which, if you're working with a student that wants to be there working on those things, you can tell they tend to go a
Yeah.
little bit further than the student
Hmm.
that's just kind of there moving along every year. Um, so
Yeah.
it's not, yeah, it's possible. You don't have to start at 3.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I mean that's my daughter. She was a gymnast that injured herself, and she started at 12 and made it all the way through the professional division at Nashville Ballet in just a short amount of time. So, but she had those fundamental body awareness skills
Mm.
from gymnastics. So, Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I think that the work ethic that they can instill in the gym carries over
Yeah.
too. And it's a very similar personal awareness and a person you're challenging yourself personally each class. And so
Yeah.
bringing that ability to do that really, I think, makes the difference.
The work ethic is critical.
Yeah.
That's there are very few people that work as hard as those artists do.
The answer is
Um,
exactly.
what is that like? What is the day-to-day like in terms of training? And if you could start with the training with the younger people and then kind of contrast that with the type of training you're doing with people our age, that would be
Yeah.
really paint a helpful picture for us.
Um, okay, so if we were to state, like, theoretically, if we're going to look at training from a younger age through what we would consider pre-professional, going out to audition for those companies, um, it generally all starts the same. We all start in that weekly ballet class, really gaining the body awareness, gaining the technical foundation and the language of ballet. What does that mean? How do we process? There's a lot of non-balletic skills that go into those lower levels, how we're counting music, how we're holding our bodies, where our body awareness is, thinking about memorizing a combination in a very short amount of time, and then taking that from our cognitive application into a physical application is a huge thing, just to process and rewrite those neurons. So that's what you're starting at a young age. And most of the young ones are only dancing for, when they're really little, when they're starting, it's just like an hour class once a week.
Okay.
That does start to slowly, ramp up. So let's see, by probably about third grade, 9, 10, is when my students in my school would start coming twice a week. We increased our class length. They come more often. And I love ballet because it's such a scaffolded art form. Like, you start with this very basic movement and you're increasing it gradually each year, and everything sort of builds on it. The students don't always love that approach. It's a little slow for a lot of the students, particularly nowadays where everything is so fast and furious, coming their way. Um, but there's this great underlayment of just foundational skills and just core work. Honestly, a lot of it is focusing on core work, when how they're holding their body, how they're holding, their pelvis, and how everything moves from there. So your technique classes gradually increase up until they're at, an hour and a half length, multiple times a week. And then about 12-ish, there's a window, and there's a lot of technical nitty-gritty that kind of goes in around starting children on point, or females on point. And a lot of that has to do with body strength, body age, physical development, bone density. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But then we put the kids onto point. So now they're taking their, twice a week, hour and a half ballet technique class, followed by an hour long point class, usually at least once a week, if not twice a week. And then that sort of expands. So by the time of my high school career was done, I was dancing, 3 to 4 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Wow. That's so
And so
demanding.
even in high,
Yeah.
it is demanding. It's very similar to, collegiate level sports, where you're
Sure.
in the gym and then we have the performing aspect, which kind of walks hand in hand with the technical training in class. So if you have the ability to work with a school that is more technically or professionally minded, you're doing full length productions multiple times of the year. And you have the ability to either do that as a school, or if the school is connected to a professional company, perform with that professional
With the
company and
company.
fill in roles with the company. And generally, if you're on a professional track, that's what you're looking for. That's what you
Right.
want to do, have that experience, because, it is an art form too, and exposure and being seen by choreographers and directors and other people is important too.
Absolutely.
So for me, because I was in a conservatory, we weren't attached to a professional company, but we presented 2 full-length ballets every year, plus the school produced what they called a showcase, but was basically just presentations of variations and things from classical ballets. It was like little
segments of known performances.
Yeah. So we obviously did Nutcracker every year. And then your spring ballet was a different story ballet of various lengths. And if it was a shorter story ballet, they would kind of bring in contemporary choreographers. So we would have that opportunity as well. Once you're done with that training, the next step is people would typically go into either a college program, because now they're ready for some of those more prestigious dance programs in college, or you start auditioning and hope that you get a contract offer with a company. You cross your fingers. And a lot of us would either, put our chips in one pot or the other. And a couple of us would be like, well, I'll apply to the colleges so I have a backup if I don't get something. Some of us would just on a whim, decide to move to New York City and say, we're going to take classes and something will come our way. Like, there's definitely multiple ways to go about the journey after the high school training. For me, I auditioned and I was offered a contract to come in and work with Richmond Ballet. And that was pretty much jumping off the high dive right into real life ballet, and a huge learning curve in just how that functions, because as a student, everything is very segmented and everything is very laid out, and you take this class and then you take that class. So jumping into the career aspect of it came with its own challenges, and it a much more rigorous schedule, because you're working daily, like that's your 9 to 5 now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what I do for my training with the adults is obviously not that intense. They're not looking to go and perform at that level. So most of the adults that I get into my program are adults that have always wanted to explore it. It was something that was always out of reach. It was always something that they had dreamed of and didn't have the opportunity as a kid. Or they did dance as a child and they just want to return to something that's enjoyable to them. And so our training is, what I like to say is, it's adult training wrapped in real technique, because there's been a trend for dance related physical fitness that's classes. Not really what we do. Zumba. Right? We're doing the classical ballet training, but I have modified various things or the training schedule to sort of adapt to where our bodies are now. Starting something as an older individual is a little bit different. Our bodies just need different things. When you're 8 or 10, your muscles are just a little bit more adaptable. Your tendons are longer. And a lot of us are coming in with pre-existing injuries or things that have maybe physically changed how we're approaching things. So we do a lot of talking about the body awareness and how to, integrate that. I place a lot of value in the reason and the physicality behind it, as opposed to some of the older training, which was just put your leg up in the air. There was a whole age of just do it. And so we do talk about how there's a lot of anatomy and physiology that goes into our classes, where we're talking about how the body works and how which muscles we want to be working and focusing on, which I think lends itself well to the virtual environment, because you can have those conversations and they can conceptualize those and put them into their own bodies. And because we're all in our own homes, we don't do some of those larger, bigger traveling type steps, which is okay, because those are harder on your body anyway. For me, I think it's great particularly for women that want to come into this at an older age, after 40, because when we're talking about weight bearing activity, this is like one of the best things you can do, because you're on your own weight and you're pushing up and you're pushing away and you're holding your own legs. We don't need the weights. We don't need those aspects of it. So our training tends to be a little bit slower paced, just in terms of, some of my students have said that it's gentle. I don't necessarily like to describe it as gentle movement, because we're still really working. We're sweating by the end of the hour, but it's not it's not cardio in the sense that we're just repetition after repetition after
Right.
repetition. Very thoughtful
Mhm.
into how we're doing this, so we're not overusing, you know, if I overuse my ankles at this point in life, like they tell me the next morning.
Yeah, you're gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah.
So we want people to be coming back. And I have students that are dancing 6 days a week now. They're coming in for their hour-long class 6 days a week. And this has become their time at the gym, or their time for themselves. And I personally, there's not a lot of physical exercise, I think, that focuses so much on core work and balance work and maintaining your own physical strength. I mean, standing up straight and putting your leg up at 90 degrees out from your hip takes a lot of strength internally that we can kind of fudge in a lot of other areas. We can overcompensate. And it really, that balance point of, my dance physical therapist and I were just talking about, like, the balance point of our core, where we can't overcompensate because it twists. So we can't overcompensate because we see the rotation in. So it kind of gives us this baseline to start with that is really nice for adults. And we're moving to music, and they're
That's
enjoying
right.
themselves, and they feel like they're doing something that's fun and working
Yeah.
hard, which I think is a good combination as an adult.
That's what we always talk about on this.
It's so
You,
important to
you,
enjoy whatever
yeah.
sport or exercise you choose. It's so critical that you enjoy it. There may be some people that are not as familiar with ballet. Maybe you could tell us, when you're teaching point, what does that mean, and how do you contrast that with kind of contemporary dance? So what is
Well,
point?
or would you be teaching point to adults? Or
That's
I
also a
guess
good
would be
question.
another great question to go in with that. I don't know if you would or not.
Actually, we do. There are several
Okay.
adult point classes. I do not have one just yet at my studio. However, we are looking at our first cohort in the fall to put up adults on point. I will caveat that. So, well, backtrack for just a second. Point work itself is the kind of shoe that you are
Right.
dancing with. In a typical, what we would call ballet technique class, you're in what we just call a technique slipper, a ballet slipper. Those are the cotton. They're either canvas or leather. Traditionally, they were leather. Now everyone is in canvas. Um, Shoe that just kind of gives a little bit of support on the bottom of the foot, mostly so it's protected. We can turn, we can brush the floor, and it just gives us that little bit of friction that we need as we're holding rotation in any position that we are in. Point work are the shoes that we traditionally see if you're going to go see a classical ballet. They're the shoes that have the hard box around the toe. So it's like a hard little box of glue and canvas that allows the dancer to stand up on our toe
The
tips,
tip of the toe.
the tip of the toe. So your foot is completely extended. You're up on the tips of your toes, and the shoe helps hold the foot in place through the box. And what we call the shank, which is the bottom sole of the shoe, it runs up the bottom of the foot and supports your arch. Now, I'm saying the shoe supports your foot, but it is really enhancing the strength that has already been built up in the ankle and the foot. So you can't just snap on a pair of point shoes and go twirling away. There's a lot of pre-existing work that has gone into the technique and the strength of a dancer's foot and ankle, and the rest of their body, but specifically the foot and the ankle, to be able to hold them up, because that is an abnormal foot position to be
Right.
standing on.
And not a comfortable one.
That's another myth, because after a while, it does become very comfortable. Like,
Okay.
there is this myth that it's this torturous thing. And when you start, there's a learning curve, right? But it's very much just like getting a new pair of shoes. Like, if you wore a new pair of shoes and just went running without breaking them in,
Right.
you would feel it on your feet the next day or later that day. And point shoes are very much the same thing. You have to break them in. Your feet do have to build up calluses in
Sure.
certain areas. And you build up a stamina for that particular feeling and position. But after a while, it does sort of become second nature. You're used to it. When you're spending 8 hours on your toes every day, like, that just
Woof.
becomes normal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Like anything, you get used to it. Tony, how much have you spent on point shoes over the past
Way
decade?
more than I like to. Yeah, they also
Just-
like they're made of, like you said, they're made of satin, leather, and a little bit of cardboard, and they cost like about $100 a pair and last about a week. So
Yep. Yep. You get 10 hours.
yeah.
Whoa,
So,
man.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why you want a company contract eventually, because they start to
yeah.
pay for your
Because they
shoes.
buy your shoes, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
Jenna,
Uh,
what made you want to focus on adults? When did you acknowledge this? When did you recognize this need or this niche and decide that this was where you wanted to invest your time and energy?
So I have had adults in classes for a very long time. So even back, years ago when I had my own school, we still offered adult classes because I had parents that had come to me and
yeah.
said I was interested. And so I was running adult ballet and modern and jazz classes back then. Um, and at the time, I don't think it was as available for everyone
Yeah.
to pursue. And
Hmm.
I definitely think that accessibility had something to do with that, because at that time, you were always in a brick and mortar. You had to, generally the children would always come earlier, so they'd be later at night. If you didn't have childcare, that was always a problem. So there was a lot of
Sure.
barriers there for adults. But I've been teaching them for 20, 25 years.
Oh,
I've
wow.
had adult classes. So, it's been a long time. But I really started to notice it um, when COVID hit. I was teaching
Mhm.
some adult classes online. Now, I was doing some online classes with some older students of mine that have it became our ballet bar and coffee every week. That was where, it was kind of like a reunion every week, which was
Sounds like
wonderful.
fun, actually, doesn't it?
It was. And so when COVID hit, I said, well, we'll just start transitioning because that's what everybody else did. And I will be honest, real training online was not something I was initially interested in. I was very much like this, we need hands-on, we need to
Right.
be in person. But in all fairness to the online platform, I really had not invested a lot of time or effort into assessing how it would work. This was me in my little ballet world saying, we have to be in a real studio. And, with everything, if you're open to new ideas and you're open to exploring new things, you can find some really good gems hidden amongst all of the things. And
Hmm.
so COVID was one of those gems where everything was gone. We
Hmm.
lost all of our outlets,
Yeah.
and there was this huge adjustment time of being at home with your whole family. And if you're not used to that, like that was just that there was a lot of adjustment and there was a lot of need. So I started offering classes here or there with just word of mouth. People,
Right.
would you be interested? Let's get together. And it was more about kind of having something for ourselves as we worked through all of that. Um, and the more I kind of looked into that, the more I realized that there was really this great opportunity for adults. There was this need, they were interested in it. And when you looked at that time, when you looked at a lot of adult programs, they were only beginner ballet. So you could take an adult class, but it was only a singular level ballet that encompassed whoever signed up. So they label it as a beginner ballet, but
Yeah.
you'd have this huge range because you were adult. There was no
Right.
system of advancement for the adult programs,
Yeah.
which does a disservice, I think, because when you have someone that's at a higher level of work, while they can always work down and you can always gain, they weren't getting challenged. And on the other end, if you have somebody coming in that's always wanted to do this but not ever had the opportunity, it's very intimidating to walk
Sure.
into a brick and mortar
Yeah.
with people that know what's going on. So I started launching online classes to sort of fill that need. And it's been really successful, I think, because A, we can have this leveled program. We have levels within the
Hmm.
program. They can see themselves advancing, which is important to us all to see that growth. it's not as intimidating because when they come in to the Zoom call, I'm spotlit. They can choose to change and see other people within the class, but if they don't want to see anybody, it's just all about me instructing. And of course, I can see everybody and I can
Right.
give the
Yeah.
personalized feedback, but they don't feel like they're in the mirror for everyone to see.
Sure.
They're comfortable. It's a need in the terms of they can fit it in because they're not driving. Maybe they had childcare that fell through. Maybe
Sure.
the baby is taking a nap and they can hop into class. So it's made it more accessible in terms of timing for adults. And that brought out the memberships that I offer that kind of give them unlimited access. If they become a member for all inclusive, like they can pop into any class at any time
Oh, wow.
that fits schedule. So, you know, obviously we encourage them to take the classes that are at their level, but they then have the ability to schedule in those live classes whenever it works for them. And I just think that has created an accessibility that isn't always available.
Sure.
And yeah, I saw the need and I saw the desire. And for me, I love ballet and I love what it can do for me. And that really is
Yeah.
part of my mission too, is to make it accessible both via the platforms, but
Right.
also the financial investment in,
Yeah.
I mean, this
Yeah.
ballet is like any other big sport or art. Like it costs an arm and a leg to get started.
Yeah.
And the monetary investment is real. So as adults, we don't often take the time, particularly adults that are parents, we don't often take the time or the money to spend on ourselves or our pursuits. So I wanted to sort of create a niche that did both, that was affordable and accessible. And, it's important for adults to pour into themselves too.
Yes, it
So
is.
what does that look like, I guess, from a perspective of your students? Of course, you've got the cost of your service, but then like what kind of equipment and things like that do they need to acquire to start doing classes with you?
Very simple to start doing classes. They just need a high back chair and a space to dance in.
Perfect.
Wear something that you can move in and bring a pair of socks and you're good to go.
Okay.
Okay.
There are really very few requirements outside of the webcam and the computer. Now, I really encourage them to get some sort of webcam or sign in with two different devices so that one is giving me a head to toe and the other is maybe something they can view better on than I have a lot of people that will sign in on their computer to
Right.
see the class and then a cell phone so that I can see them.
So that you can see them.
Okay.
So they just turn their video off on one and their sound off on the other, and it gives me the view. I have some that just don't have the ability to do that. So I work with everybody where they are. So if they can only come in and I can only see their knees and feet because we're working on legs, then that's what I'm
That's
seeing
what you
and
got.
that's what we're working on. And then if we're working on port de bras, they move the camera up so I can see the top part of their body. It's, in an ideal world, I'd love to see the whole thing and,
Sure.
give everybody a 15 by 15-foot space and say, go for it. But really all
Yeah.
you need is a 4 to 5 foot square area to do bar. I do have students that have invested and gotten a portable bar for their space and they pull it out. It kind of folds up and you can stick it along the wall and they pull that out to use. We've spent time and talked about dance wear and they've invested in different things, but really it's what they're capable or more comfortable in. So if they're only comfortable in, workout wear, come.
Let's talk about the benefits. Posture, strength, flexibility. What changes can someone who's, I'm 45, what changes could I expect to see if I started taking your classes regularly, maybe 3 days a week? What are the benefits?
You listed probably the really big ones, right? We are constantly working on posture. We are constantly working on core strength is a huge one because we are constantly working on how to hold that all together. We are working on just the strength within your muscles. One of the things that I personally like about ballet is that it looks really easy and the lines are so long and beautiful. But really, there's this
So hard.
super amount of strength behind it to create
Tremendous.
the length of the line, but have the strength to hold it. So as opposed to just gaining strength, say by, I can lift this amount, right? I laughed when my kids were little. We would kind of be like, oh yeah, I can lift 30 pounds. As they got bigger, you could kind of figure out how much you were slugging around as you were carrying children around. Um, and, as a parent, they came to work with me. They did all sorts of things with me. So I put them in backpacks. So I'm like, oh yeah, I rock 35 pounds regularly.
Right.
You know, but the ability to do that while standing and elongating a line that's 90 degrees from your center out away from you and not kind of pull that in and contract the muscles is really difficult. There is a lot of strength behind that. So you do gain the strength and that lengthened toned look to your muscles as opposed to kind of a more muscle building.
Right.
There is definitely muscle building, but it has a different look for that art form. So you do see body changes physically just because you're trying to embody those lines. We've seen a tremendous amount of just connection between abdominal work and upper body work, where because arms come from your back, legs come from your abdominals and your pelvic area. So everything sort of works together. But then you've got your balance, you've got your body awareness, you have your ability to transfer weight, which as we age is huge. Just to be able to know where you are in space and transfer from one foot to the other easily and change your body weight. Cognitively, we are processing information at lightning speed and transitioning that down into the other extremities of our body. And it's nonstop. It's very similar to gaming, where you have this, you're watching video games and you are reacting with your fingers, but we have to react with legs
The whole
and feet,
body.
the whole
Whole
body.
body. Yeah.
So there's this great neuron movement that's happening the whole time you're there. And stress relief is huge. Just moving your body. So we've got body
Yeah.
movement, we've got music, and we've got something we enjoy doing. So just come spend an hour once a day and you're going to have that stress and cortisol just drop, which for women in their 40s and 50s is really important.
Critical.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very important. So there are so many benefits to coming and to doing this. Yeah.
So you do it in a staged leveled process, which I think is really cool. Like this, because you're exactly right. Like my daughter teaches at Nashville Ballet some adult classes, and it's kind of like a drop-in thing. It would be like a yoga class or something like that, where you just you come in and you give them your $20 and you go dance for an hour, but it's like just everybody from everywhere. So since you do a leveled program like this, and people are able to actually progress and stuff like that, do you have any? And it's online, so I don't know how you do this. Do you have any way your participants get to showcase their skills maybe to each other or something like that in some kind of a format?
So we don't yet. That's a great question because it's kind of in the works. So I have, because we have such a diverse group that come, I have the students that only want class. They want nothing to do. They're doing it for themselves. Nobody needs to see them. They are happy with their own progress because that's their own personal goal. And I have the other end of the spectrum who are like, let's do shows, like, let's do something. So we are in the works. It's a future plan. It's not planned yet, but we do have some things in the future to work towards. It's our 5-year goal is to do some in-person retreats, which would be like long weekends where they would prepare something.
Yeah.
We would do like an in-person, central location somewhere where it would be some in-person classes, some coaching, and then a little showcase just for those people that show up. We have some plans for a virtual showcase, which is taking a little bit more to think about and plan, but we're in the works to coordinate a virtual showcase where we've all work together to sort of videotape and then edit something into a virtual thing.
That's cool.
Some of it is just a spacing issue. You know, when
Mhm.
some people are dancing in their living rooms, some people are dancing, you know,
Yeah.
wherever they can find a space. So in terms of recording everybody, that's a little different. But we have a lot of ideas. My community is full of things that they would love to have happen someday. And it's just a matter of time and growth and, you know, the ever elusive dollar to fund it all.
Always.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you've alluded to this, but I'd like to dig a little deeper because you talked about the mental benefits, the focus, and so forth. What types of mental and emotional benefits do people see from this? Because ballet is very disciplined. There's no doubt about that.
It is. It is. My approach has always been when you are teaching, and you have to kind of read the room, right? You have to read what class you're instructing and what their goal out of it is. So, you know, if I'm working with a bunch of teens whose goal is to go out and get a job in a company,
Right.
we're going to be approaching that class in a much more critical manner, in a much more very specific corrections, very and you know, a lot of times I'll teach and I'm like rapid fire giving corrections and that's the downside of the job. My job is to go tell everybody what they're doing wrong and what they need to fix, which isn't always the happy person that they want behind them. And what I have found is with the adults, right? It's a different it's a different kind of correction because a lot of them are coming from a place where they've never explored something like this, or it's been a long time. And because of our society and how we view ballet in conjunction with that society, body image can really be a struggle when you're talking ballet because we come in with this preconceived idea of what it's supposed to look like and who is supposed to be doing it. That's where I kind of get my tagline like ballet is for every body, like every version of our
Physical
bodies, every
body.
stage of our body, like everyone can benefit from this. It's any age, it's every person, everyone can gain from this because you're learning to move your body and kind of become aware of your body in a different way than our day-to-day movements. In fact, they're complete opposite from our day-to-day movements, right? We are in a very parallel, you know, toes forward motivation, you know, glutes move everything because we're stepping forward. We don't often move in a side to side space unless we're moving aside for another person.
Right.
Like everything is in this very linear, you
One
know,
plane of motion.
pathway. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to be able to start to move muscles and bodies and awareness in this multiplane, like we're up, we're down, we're sideways, we're rolling, you know, and we're working in a rotated position. So you're accessing a different set of muscles. You're asking that instinctual brain to kind of pause, to work on something that's in this deeper level and not let your body just instinctively take over. And so I think sometimes when we as an adult feel a lack of control in the greater world around us, being able to come into this one space where we're working on something that we can control and we feel the benefits of is really important mentally. Like this is something, it's ourselves. We can do it for ourselves. We can feel better. And it doesn't matter so much what it's looking like because a lot of the transformation does not externally show until we've internally done all of that work. That core work has to happen first, and we can't see it. The
Yeah.
muscle lengthening has to happen first, and we can't see it. We feel it.
Feel it.
And so there's this kind of control over ourselves and what we're doing that I think is really important mentally for adults.
Absolutely.
Something one of our regular guests, our semi-regular guest, it's a physical therapist named JB, and he's been on and he gave the recommendation on the first time he was on that adults should go out and try doing a somersault because it's something we don't do. It's a motion that we just don't do. So of course, you know, like some friends, we went out on a run and afterwards like, hey guys, let's get in the grass here and do some somersaults. And I'm like, why are we doing somersaults? But it's just that whole idea that like as you get older, you get in these just like running, walking, those are normal movement patterns, but we're not doing like even when we were younger, we were doing stuff like somersaults and cartwheels and doing all kinds of spinning around in
All over
circles
the
and those kinds of
place.
things. And we don't do those things. And so do you see that with ballet? It's a way to kind of maybe in a more serious way than like, just me and my friends rolling around in the grass at the park. Um, to start introducing more movements that we just don't do on a regular basis.
No, absolutely. I think it falls in line with that proprioception, right? Like as kids, when they want to regulate their bodies or their emotions, they're like they seek that proprioception input. So they're doing the hanging upside down or the swinging
Yeah.
or all of those things that sort of regulate that cross body movement, right? That is so important when we're developing. And you're right, we absolutely like in the seriousness of adulthood drop that. And
Yeah.
it, I think from a body perspective that it's really important because it kind of brings everything back into balance. We tend to, because we're only moving in that one motion, and our spine is meant to move in many directions. Like that's why we're capable of it. So by not forming those things, I think we do have this underlying, and this is completely my opinion, but there is this underlying deficit of input into our systems. I'm not a medical
Yeah.
doctor. I can't,
Sure.
but I do see that they're gaining this awareness of where they are in space, where they feel, and then that carries over because they feel like they have this input and this control, and things become more imbalanced in their own bodies. That like feeds other aspects of their lives, in conjunction, I think, with the stress release of moving and all of those play a
Yeah.
role. And then they can kind of go out and they're like, hey, I can tackle this. One of the feedbacks that I have gotten regularly are my morning classes. So on the weekends, I'll run earlier morning classes, and I have some people on the West Coast that wake up early on purpose just
That'd
to
be
like
real
come
early,
join us
wouldn't
at
it?
6 and 7
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And they're like, I love it. I roll out of bed, I take class, and I feel like I'm reset to start my day. And I've had that feedback many times. And so, yeah, I think it kind of all plays into that same thing that, and we might not be in the grass, but when we're doing, a contemporary type workshop or something, we're on the floor rolling around. So it's just in a different space.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's something that just people don't do and they really should. And it feels so, but I love the idea of like using dance, especially for adults. And then also just the accessibility of ballet to everybody is because I think that a lot of people don't understand that like there are benefits to it. And we do see it as something that, at my age, I see as ballet as something I go watch. It's not something I'm ever going to do,
Same.
Yeah.
like
Same.
No, and I think that goes back to this stigma that has been there that you're only going to study it as a child, and then you only continue it if that's going to be your career path.
yeah.
That there's like a cutoff, and if you think about all of the other physical things that we allow ourselves to study or participate in as an adult, those aren't our career paths. We're doing them because there's a benefit or a desire or a joy that we're getting out of them. And I do
Yeah.
think we need to kind of cross that into the dance realm a little bit,
Mm.
bit more.
More, yeah.
A lot of adults are self-conscious about this. We're nervous. Our bodies don't feel like they can move that way. And I feel like and have been told that I am a terrible dancer. So when you're working with a
Same.
new person who has no rhythm and is very self-conscious about it, how do you overcome specifically that mental block? How do you coach them to be more comfortable?
So because, and I have been able to tackle this because I have the leveled program, and it has allowed me to break apart. So one of the first things that I like to do, I mean, my classes are offered in many different ways. And one of them is an a la carte, which means you are free to come sign up to whatever level you feel that you fit at. However, I will then like reach out and be like, hey, this is what I saw. This is what I recommend. And let's kind of look at a different plan. If
Mhm.
someone's coming in completely beginner, like I really don't know what I'm doing, I don't know where to start. They're going to go into the beginner ballet level, because all of those classes, and people don't always stay there very long, if I'm honest. A lot of people come in until they're comfortable with the terminology that we're using at that level, and comfortable with just that is the level where we very much talk through, where's your body supposed to be? What is it supposed to feel like? What is this position? What does it mean? Because it's a language all of its own to sort of have that entry level. But then once they've gotten that, really they need to be moving on to that next level where we're putting all of those knowledge pieces into a full bar. And having that leveled structure really lets me compartmentalize where students are. So we're really teaching to that narrower scope of technique base, right? Of knowledge, so that then they can then start to move into different levels. And I will, within our community, we'll have, little coaching sessions where it's like where assessment sessions is what I call them. We'll just pop in, we'll have 15 minutes. Where are you? What are your concerns? What are you having a hard time with? Great. This is where I think we should be, targeting your classes for things. Because I think the feedback is important for adults in particular. I think personalized feedback is extremely important.
Very much so.
So that it is completely, wholly connected to the person in front of you and not just the class as a whole. Because the other things adults love to do is if you give a general correction, everyone works on it. Everyone. Children don't work like that.
Yeah. So when you give a correction in a class, because I like this online format that you've got here, because like say it was me, I was Chris here. I'm a terrible dancer, and I wouldn't want to be dancing around other people. So like I like the online thing, so nobody else but you, presumably, or my instructor would be the one seeing me. So when you offer corrections, are you able to offer individual corrections to people, or do you, and when you offer an individual correction to somebody, is that given so only that person hears it, or does everybody are you like, hey, Tony, that looks like garbage. Why are you doing that? And everyone hears it. I know you wouldn't say that, but
well, first of all, it never looks like garbage. We just have to improve it a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is another caveat, right? We all start somewhere. It's like the same tenet of there's no stupid question. Like if we don't know, we don't know. You only know what you do know. So if you're going to come into a class and you don't know what plie means, which means to bend, we're bending our knees, like there would be no reason that I should assume that you would know that, because you're in a beginner level class. And the assumption is we are starting at the beginning. And if you know more than that, great, let's move you to some place where you're going to be working at your level. To come back to that original question, absolutely, I can give individual corrections. It's the running joke amongst my my Sunday morning classes that I don't miss anything, because they will do something and go, oh gosh, I hope she didn't see that. I messed up. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, she saw it. She just didn't say anything. Because there's another skill in knowing when to say something. Pick your battles. What do we want to be focusing on? What do we want to be working on? Because we can't fix the whole palace all at once. We have to start with the first little stone. So in my live classes, I give a lot of feedback. I would say 60 to 70% of it is a more general, like keep this in mind when we're doing as we're shifting from side to side, watch your rib cage while we're going into our grand plie, because we're letting that go just a little bit, lengthen your spine. And I talk a lot. So I tend to talk through a lot of stuff while we're dancing and be like, keep thinking about this, stretch your legs, the whole thing. But I can absolutely see all of my little squares. I have this beautiful large TV that gives me larger squares on Zoom, so I can see everything.
So you could see,
and I can see them. They can't see it, but I want, that's my job. I want to see them. I want to be able to offer corrections. But I think particularly for adults too, it's important to combine that with, this is where you've grown. This is what I see you working on it all week. It's really come together by the end of the week. So they're getting that reinforcement that what they're thinking about along the way is just as important as a correction. And I'll give personal corrections throughout class. Everyone in class can hear them, but I grew up with some pretty intense Russian teachers that fit the stereotype of a Russian ballet teacher, right? And I remember leaving thinking like, this wasn't supportive. It wasn't helpful. It was helpful in the long term, but in the moment, like you don't feel like it's supportive help. So I try really
Yeah.
hard to offer corrections that are from a place of, it would be really nice. It would extend the line if you thought about this. Watch where you're here because this is where it can lengthen and become better. So I'm really trying to come from a place of, we're all working on things. And if I'm being real, half the corrections are things I need to be thinking about when I'm at the bar. So I'll say them out loud because we all need to be thinking about them. And I'm pretty open about that in my classes that, I'm over here sweating and working just as much as you guys.
And and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess for people in these classes, at least my experience with people in the more kind of serious end of the ballet world, if you're getting corrections, you're actually somebody the teacher cares about. If you're not getting corrections, they're ignoring you, is what that means.
That's
You
fine.
know?
No, there's a lot of truth to that, particularly in that pre-professional track. There is a lot of, you want the corrections. And thankfully, I have to say, almost all of the adults that I'm working with, they want
Yeah.
personalized feedback. They're looking to improve. So to not get a correction makes them feel unseen. So I actually haven't had any complaints about corrections from the adults, which is very refreshing because when you walk in with teens, they're the opposite.
Very self-conscious. Yeah. Well, Jenna, this has been really interesting. If one of our listeners is interested in finding you, where do they find you? What do these packages look like?
So my website is jenakosisdance.com. And on there, you can actually take single a la carte classes. I try to keep everything affordable, so single classes are $10 a piece. You can
Oh,
come in, take
wow.
a
That's
class
very
for
affordable.
$10, and try it out. That's what I recommend to everybody to do first. If you have questions about where you think should try that first class, I always encourage everybody, you can check out the contact me page through the website, and
Right.
that'll send me an email. And I am pretty much a one-person show at this point. So you'll hear
Cool.
from me personally when I get back, when you get a response back. So I recommend that people start there. You can, on the homepage, you can kind of find the class schedule, and all of that is done through the page. Then if that's something that is beneficial to you, or you feel like that is going to be something that you're interested in pursuing long term, I do have 2 membership packages that I offer through the website. The first is a completely digital on demand. And that again is a pretty affordable. It's $10 a month.
Wow.
At the time of the recording, safest to
Right.
say, you never, I don't know when that can
To
change, but right now one of my tenets is that I do want to make it affordable. Our family was single income with 4 children for a very long time.
Wow.
And so budgeting is something. There was no budget for me personally, or a parent
Right.
personally, like it all went to kids. So I want this to be affordable to people. I want this to be something they can achieve and add into their lives. So the on-demand library are class recordings, not of students, but of me teaching the class.
Sure.
So I record every class I teach. My personal video goes into
That's
the
cool.
library, so they can
So they
take
do have
those
access
on.
to that library.
Mhm. That library is in the on-demand library, and they also have a private community attached to that, so they can talk to other dancers. And then
Oh, wow.
I host a once a month coffee chat. So it's to come on, ask questions, we'll chat. I try to replicate a brick and mortar as much as I can in the virtual space. And then if you want the live, and then there's a discount code attached to for live classes if you want to take live classes. But if you know that you're going to take live classes, there's an all access, which is $50 a month. You get unlimited live classes plus the online library, and they get extra workshops every month where we do fun things like focus on jumps and turns, or we do floor bar, or we had a tap class one month. Just different fun
so big variety.
things to like. Yeah, we're trying to offer variety. And right now it's just a once a month workshop, but as we grow, that will probably expand just because I have lots of ideas.
Well, cool.
That's you're not going to get a lot of like one-on-one instruction in anything in fitness for those prices either. Like
No.
that's really actually quite impressive to be able to talk to someone who's a ballet professional and do classes with them for
Yeah.
$50 a month. I mean,
That's like a session with a trainer.
yeah.
It is, it is. And I get that a lot, and I've gone back and forth, and yeah, my coaching rate in different situations is different. But one of the things that I think is missing is that we're losing a huge crowd of people because of a cost
Yeah.
drought. Yeah, I mean, the
Yeah.
cost is imperative, and I just feel like it's really important, particularly for adults, to have something. I probably would have been able to scrimp and save for something like this that would have, had something like this been available at a different season in my life, it probably would have been something that I could have prioritized at that
Yeah.
point. And that's really the kind of part of my mission, is just to kind of give back, and arts need it right now. So
Yes.
Yes,
Indeed.
they do.
I definitely appreciate the idea. Fitness is
No,
expensive, and I kind of feel like it shouldn't be. I really
they shouldn't
appreciate
be.
that
Yeah.
you have prioritized accessibility, because it is out of reach for a lot of people, and that is very important and a very astute observation. So,
Absolutely.
well,
Jenna,
I thank it. I love what I'm doing. So I appreciate the the focus on it and just the
yeah.
platform. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being on. This is
Thank you for taking
interesting,
the
and I've
time
really
to
enjoyed
talk
it.
with us. And we'll link to the website and all of this in the show notes. So if you're not a subscriber on Substack, we encourage you to do so. And like I said, you'll get emails with a lot of additional content available. Jenna, once again, thank you for your time. Really, really enjoyed
Thanks.
this.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed talking with you guys.
Thank you for listening. Please make sure to like or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We also list the show notes and have lots of bonus content available on Substack or Instagram.